Wow, guys, a lot has happened since the last time we talked. This may be the most we've ever had to discuss in a single episode. So buckle up. Ready? Let's go. If you feel like it's been a long time since we've had any kind of harvest to talk about in Cardano or in crypto generally, or if you're finding value in these videos, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies DRep address and the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. Wow, guys, thank you. Thank you for joining. We have got so much to talk about, and most of it has nothing to do with this thumbnail. But this thumbnail is about something important that just happened. So we're going to talk about that as well. Let's see who's here. D.U is here. D.U is here. It says pump it. Yep. Getting tired of the falling knives. I think we all are. Yep, absolutely. Taz is here. Hello. Thank you for joining. Danil is here. Thanks for being here, Danil. Pucky Hawk is here. Pucky Hawk says rock on. Blue Mammal says can't wait for this. My guys, same. Hill Dog is here. Oh, thank you for saying that, Hill Dog. Thank you for saying that. Thanks for joining. Brown Beardo is here. That's a new name. I like the old one was cool. This one's cool too. I like them both. Joe Davidson's here. Very excited. Yep, me too. Cardano for the win is here. Hello. Thank you for joining. 80 Eclipse is here. Oasis, yes, please. Yeah, we are in the Oasis, guys. Or maybe we're in a whole new lush land. And Oasis kind of implies it's just an island of vegetation, lushness in the desert. And I would argue we're in a whole new land. I think 2026 is not just an oasis, but a whole new land. But you're right, this is a lush change from the desert the astronaut found himself in pretty much the last couple months. Michael's here. Let's go, Michael. Let's go. Streetwise says, welcome back, guys. Let's go. Che Marie is here. Let's go. 2026 is off with a bang. Yep. And thank you for posting that video that you posted earlier today. That was a beautiful video. Rulo is here. Hola, Rulo. Thank you for joining. What a year so far. It is. My God. Green is good. Oh God, it feels so good. It feels so good to even have enough hope that there could be green, but in fact, there is green now. It's amazing. Some echo in the audio. Okay, let me see if I can address the echo. Hold on one second. Okay, sorry about that, guys. That might help just slightly with the echo. There's a few things. Tonight I was so busy with so many topics. There was normally I do a few things to kind of mitigate echo, but I didn't do them quite like normal tonight. So hopefully that's a little bit better. Okay, people are saying it's good enough. Next time there's a few things I can do to mitigate the echo that I haven't done tonight. But anyways, we've got a lot to talk about. Neo Chat is here. Thank you for joining. Let's go. Absolutely. Okay, let's jump into it. First of all, let's talk about part of why this is happening. So it was noticed. It was noticed by probably all of us that we finally climbed back out of the 30s, which is an absurd place to be, given where we've been, 12 months ago, where we were 4 years ago. It's absurd to be in the 30s. It hurt. It was painful. It was like this dagger somebody stuck in our heart, and they just kind of kept twisting it for weeks and weeks and weeks, being out low. But things are a little bit better. Okay, this is Frazek is here. Thank you for joining. Frazek is here. Afro in the Wind got the first nocturnal emission. Excellent. I actually was sort of awarded my first nocturnal emission a couple days ago. It's like really small, one of my very smallest ones, tiny, minuscule compared to the bigger bags. But I haven't even collected it yet. But thank you for saying that, because it reminded me. Streetwise is here. Says, give me the damn utility. Ooh, I agree. Carve me a smile says AOS. Let's go. Like Vincent Van. Let's go. Otis Freechov is here. Let's go. Chalk Milk is here. Made it live. All right. Thank you. Yeah, actually, Brown Beardo is much easier to pronounce, so it's shorter, definitely. How many? Oh, so many. We got so much stuff to talk about. Okay, let's get to it, guys. Let's get to it. No more, no more playing around in the comments. We got a lot to talk about. Okay, so obviously we're green. This is a nice change. The dagger that was plunged into our hearts, you know, pretty much all of 2025 and just twisted. And the most, like the highest tension twisting was kind of in December. I feel like the dagger has been released, and I kind of knew it would be between the last day of sort of the last few days of December and now. I sort of knew we'd be having this discussion today. Why is that? Why did I know we'd be having this discussion? Well, part of it is this. Some of you already know what harvest I'm referring to. I'm not referring to selling your bags like we often talk about, the path to the moon Lambos. No, I'm talking about tax loss harvesting. So most of you know what this is, but for those of you who don't, we're going to keep it really simple. A lot of people, especially in an environment like this, have some nice losses they can incur by selling their crypto. When the cryptos are down, a lot of people will sell their cryptos to incur those losses, and then they can write those. In some cases, I'm not giving tax advice here. Speak to your own accountants. I'm not an accountant or a tax professional of any kind, but people will incur those losses so they can write them off against their profits for the year, so they can try to reduce their tax bill. So a lot of that happens the last little bit of December. So we knew the last little bit of December was going to be super ultra painful. The dagger, even though it's been in our damn hearts for all year, all of 2025, we knew whoever had that dagger was just going to push it in a little bit further, a little deeper into our hearts, and just twist it a little bit more. A lot of us knew that was going to happen the last few days of December because of tax loss harvesting. And then what happens the first few days of December, as soon as we kind of cross that midnight line, as soon as we're in 2026, the same people who wanted to incur those losses as a tax loss harvesting are going to rebuy. They're going to rebuy those coins if they wish to hold them. If they wish to continue holding them, they might just rebuy the same coins. You know, who knows? They might shuffle their portfolio a little bit, might buy other assets, that kind of thing. But there's going to be buying, you know, and some of it's this tax loss harvesting, the repurchasing after tax loss harvesting. And there's a lot of other things that are going on. There's optimism for the new year, all these things. But I knew tax loss harvesting was going to happen. That's why I wrote the title to this and thought about this thumbnail like Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday. I already knew what the thumbnail was going to be for this because I had a feeling this was going to be a beautiful green day. But I think it's more than that. I don't think this is just a temporary tax loss harvesting. I mean, God knows what tomorrow is going to be. Tomorrow might be all red. Tomorrow might be as red as these apples, which is part of why this thumbnail is not just green. I could have chosen any fruit. I chose apples because there could always be red. There could always be red tomorrow. But I do have very good feelings about 2026. I think we're looking forward to a great year. Okay. Mark Going says, happy Sunday. Let's go. So much happening. Yeah. I mean, there's, there are all kinds. I tend to shy away from any kind of tax advice on this channel because I don't want to give anybody any tax advice, and I never do. So I never kind of talk about the contours of what people might be doing. I just like to mention there is this phenomenon that takes place the last few days of December, and everybody should talk to their own CPAs if they want to understand the contours of that, because I don't want anybody to get any false information on this channel and then come blame me later when they get a giant bill from the IRS. Just know there's a thing, tax loss harvesting. We're now past it, probably. So we're kind of finally that good part, the time when things start getting real good. Matt, good morning. Good morning. Thank you for joining. Things start getting real good, and we start to see nice days like this with these nice 7-day gains. See, we're already a little red. We're a little red today, but we're in the 40s. We climbed out of those 30s. But if you hedge your losses against your wins, tax, Paul Holly says tax ? Another good reason not to have these discussions in crypto, because this is the attitude of far too many people in crypto. Nothing against you, Bohali, but you make a very good point. This is actually what many people in crypto are thinking. Not me, IRS. I pay all my damn taxes. I pay all of them. Sub-Zero is here. Happy New Year. Thanks for joining. Frazik, I am jealous. I'm jealous. No capital gains tax where I live. I've always been jealous of people in these jurisdictions where there is no capital gains tax. It makes a lot of sense if you think about it. So let's get going here on the other news because we've got so much to talk about tonight. So we saw this. So there was actually a bigger news item, but I'm addressing this one first. So because this is the more real thing. This is the more real thing. If you never sell, Brown Beardo says, if you never sell, you never have to pay. Good point. Good point. So this was the real bigger news. This was not what everybody's focused on. So this is the New York Fed website. If you don't know how the repo markets work, I'll show you the actual definition of reverse repo and repo markets in just a second, which we've talked about before on the channel, so we won't dwell on it. But if you don't know how it works, this is the FOMC directing the New York Fed to do these things in the repo market and the reverse repo market. So if you want to see the actual numbers, they're transparent about the numbers, the volumes. You can see the volumes on a daily basis. You just go to the New York Fed website. If you go to my X account to this post, click on this link, you can see exactly what's going on here. So this was an actual, small liquidity event. So people get real excited when you say that because they say, no, the repo markets are just to fix temporary stoppages in the plumbing of the financial system. It's not really liquidity. And that's true for the reasons we're going to talk about in just a second. But when we can look at the net in the repo market and you only have 5.667 billion on the reverse repo side and almost 20 billion on the repo side, you do have net liquidity between these two things. Sure, it's a repo market because there's going to be repurchase. So it is a temporary thing, but these numbers are pretty big. When you're talking about, 14 billion and change, and the thing we got really excited about directly from the FOMC was that they were going to engage in 40 billion per month in reserve management, QE. 14 billion, when you put it in that context, it's pretty significant. This is pretty significant compared to the 40 billion in QE we're talking about. So even if it's temporary, this is still liquidity. So the thing that everybody got really excited about was posting like this. So you saw this, we would have seen this on January 1st. Everybody would have seen this. And you saw headlines like this. Holy shit, the Fed just injected 105 billion into the economy overnight. So this is a good example of how crypto X screws things up all the time. So you see posts like this, right? And you think, surely this person knows what the hell they're talking about. But sometimes they don't, because we have to ask not just what's happening in the repo market, but what's happening in the reverse repo market. In this case, we had 105 billion in liquidity in the repo market, like you saw from this poster, and this person got 101,000 views when I made this post. It's going to be more now, but they had 101,000 views. This person comes along, explains what's actually going on. He says, think of repos and reverse repos like overnight plumbing for the financial system. Exactly what I just said, coincidentally. Haven't looked at this since the first, but he says, repos, the Fed injects money by lending cash to banks overnight in exchange for safe collateral. Liquidity goes up. But reverse repos, the Fed drains money by taking cash from banks and giving them collateral overnight. This is exactly correct, which is what I posted down here. And I gave you the actual numbers. So this guy didn't even lay out the numbers. This guy laid out only the positive side, only the liquidity positive side of it, 105 billion. But if you go to the actual New York Fed website, you saw this. Yeah, there was 105.993 billion in the repo market, which is liquidity positive temporarily. But there was also 74.6 billion in the reverse repo market, which is the Fed sucking up cash. So you can think of the repo market as the Fed injecting cash. The reverse repo market is the Fed sucking up cash. If you're ever confused about this, or you're fighting with somebody online who doesn't understand the difference, I made this little blurb for you directly from Fred, directly from the St. Louis Fed's big chart website. you can find exactly these definitions of what the repo market is and what the reverse repo market is. And they say right there, the repo market, the Fed buys a security. So they're paying cash, they're injecting cash into the system and taking in a security. Reverse repo market, New York Fed sells a security. So securities go into the system, back into the system. And I shouldn't use the word back because this is a repurchase market, which will make it confusing. But we'll say a security goes into the system and cash gets sucked up by the Fed. So if you're ever fighting with somebody about this, who's like this person and doesn't understand that there are two sides to this repo market, you can just post this for them. Just Control C, Control V this thing, and they will understand. But the vast majority of people in crypto do not understand the difference between these two. They don't understand how either one works, or that they're two different things. They'll refer to them both by the same name, even though they're doing exactly opposite things. So that's why this one was actual news. There was 14 billion and change net positive liquidity. Sure, you can argue it's temporary, whatever. This one though, that second one I just showed you, that 105, that was not the real thing, because it was actually this much smaller amount. In fact, it was negative because this was the reverse repo number they showed you here. So you can see right there, reverse repo. So this is the opposite of liquidity. And the actual liquidity number was 74.6 billion in the repo market. This was the reverse repo. This is the Fed sucking up cash. So what he should have been saying is the Fed just sucked up 105 billion in cash. That's negative liquidity, but there was another 74.6 billion in the actual repo market. So you only really had like negative 25 billion in net temporary liquidity. So this is basically like not even a news item, but it gets 101,000 views in crypto. I just wanted to clear that up so people understand what the hell's going on with those. I would agree with this. So Brown Beardo says, I would contend the Fed uses repo, reverse repo terms on purpose to confuse people. Yeah, I mean, like this whole system is, there's Mission Zambia. Good morning, Mission Zambia. Thank you for joining. Thanks for joining. Yeah, the ignorant bastard said they will understand if they take the time to read past big bold letters. True. If they just read that thing, literally, if you just post this for people and they just read the red part, I made these parts red to make it super easy for people to understand. Feel free to post this for people and they will understand. There's the actual links to the Fred website with these definitions. That's straight from their site. But I agree. They create these complex, convoluted systems to obscure what's actually going on, because let's face it, everybody would revolt if they understood. If every single actor in the economy understood what the hell was going on, they would like totally revolt against the dollar. All of us in crypto have already revolted against the dollar. That's why we're here. But if everybody did that, the system would collapse. So I agree. They made it's made to be. It's like a lot of things. The terminology is intentionally hard to comprehend if you're not native to that terminology. It's like the use of Latin in law, right? It's like there are normal English ways to say all those things, but crazy Latin terms are used. Like the average person does not know what stare decisis means. And there's a very easy way to explain that in English, yet the law still uses stare decisis. The financial system is going to use terms like repo market, reverse repo market, and there would be a much easier way to explain it, but that's not their goal. For the average person to explain it would be like the seeds of rebellion. They don't want that. So there you go. Okay, what else have we got? So we had a lot of fun with Grok. Grok loves Cardano, apparently. So there were a lot of super funny posts. People would post a bunch of cryptocurrencies and say, hey, Grok, remove every cryptocurrency from this image except the one that's most likely to perform the best in 2026. No surprise, this person not expecting what Grok gave them, just Cardano, most likely to perform the best in 2026. Their response, why? But Grok is Grok and had a really good analysis. Grok said, based on expert analysis, I kept Cardano due to its upcoming catalysts. Funny word to use, Grok. Midnight sidechain for privacy, potential spot ETF approval boosting inflows, Laos upgrades for scalability, DeFi expansions, and rising DEX volumes. They didn't even say Bitcoin DeFi. Sources like Bitcoinist and Motley Fool highlight these for 2026 outperformance despite 2025's 60% drop. Predictions vary. Bitcoin may hit 200K, but Cardano's ecosystem growth could shine. always do your own research, definitely. But this I thought was pretty interesting. This person very surprised by this. And there was an even funnier one that got an equal amount of focus. Somebody said, Grok, please remove the scam cryptocurrency, and basically had the same cryptocurrencies, and it removed Solana and kept, I think a lot of the Solana people were probably wishing it removed Cardano for that one. But, does this mean anything? Not really, but it's very interesting that Grok would respond in this way to these. Okay, Mark says, any idea why the St. Louis Federal Reserve seems very prominent? Normally I only hear about St. Louis in New York. Just wondering. We end up talking about the St. Louis Fed all the time on this channel because they run Fred, which has all the Fed's data. It has all the charts. It's like the giant chart repository for all of the Fed. So we end up talking about it a lot on this channel. It's interesting you only hear about this about St. Louis and New York though. So I actually haven't researched that as much as I would like. I'd like to look into that and see. I haven't looked very closely at the distribution of responsibilities for all of the Fed, all of the different parts of the Fed. Like we kind of know that Boston was in charge of kind of like fintech stuff, and they had the kind of the joint venture thing with MIT, whatever you want to call it. I'm probably not using the same terminology they would, but we kind of knew about that one and a few other things. But it would be interesting to know about all of the different responsibilities where they differ with different parts of the Fed. Yeah, Grok was pretty savage with Solana, which surprised me. I kind of expected, I can almost guarantee you would have gotten a different response if you went to ChatGPT. I 100% feel like ChatGPT would be like trying to make digital love to Ethereum, and being as harsh as possible on Cardano, just because the sort of like political spectrum of ChatGPT users probably is more coextant with Ethereum fandom, and Grok is probably a lot more like Cardano people. Not implying anything about I think we have people from all parts of the political spectrum in Cardano, certainly, but I think definitely if I had to guess, I would say ChatGPT people are probably a lot more pro Ethereum than Grok people for some reason. Let me just put it that way. Jordan for America, thank you. Please let me know when there's no CGT. What's CGT? What's CGT? Grok loves Cardano. That's funny. Grok is obviously the smarter AI. That's what I would argue. Okay, moving on. Anti-crypto SEC Commissioner Caroline Crenshaw resigns. So Caroline Crenshaw, you can find a lot of examples of her being very anti-crypto, but she was kind of like the last member. I would call her a member of the anti-crypto army. She was sort of the last member of the anti-crypto army at the SEC. And she wrote things like this about the XRP settlement, Ripple settlement, whatever. They get mad over in that camp when you confuse Ripple and XRP, but whatever you want to call that settlement, whatever it was, this is what she wrote about it. This settlement, alongside the programmatic disassembly of the SEC's crypto enforcement program, does a tremendous disservice to the investing public and undermines the court's role in interpreting our securities laws. Basically, she was just like, anything that was like, let's be friendly to crypto, she's like, that's a disservice to the investing public. We need to protect them from crypto, not befriend crypto. Basically, just the whole dragon anti-crypto army perspective on the world. She's resigned. Thank God. This is a good thing for us. Oh, capital gains tax. Okay, I'm with you. Also, let me know when there's no capital gains tax. Exactly. Mark says, stare decisis, the only thing I remember from my law course. Laugh out loud. You know what's funny? And I won't go into detail on that, but yeah, that's funny you say that. Okay, so another member of the anti-crypto army down. This is great. So here's something that when I first read it, I also thought this might not be real, but we've reached that point in the timeline when we almost can't worry about what's real and what's not. You just have to ask yourself directionally, is it valuable, right? So this is this long story. Somebody posted this long story. They claimed they were a person working at a, kind of like a food delivery, app. Kind of, they didn't name any names, but implied it was a big one. So a lot of people assumed it was a certain gigantic app that everybody knows about. And those guys have already denied it. But basically, they tell a story about how, the app does these things, like, if the app knows if the algorithm knows that you're a big tipper, what they do is they offer the driver, like if they know that you generally tip $2, they will, instead of offering the driver the normal $10, they'll offer the driver $8, knowing that you'll tip $2 no matter what on that order. And so the driver will get his $10 and you'll feel like you tipped, which, if you think about it, is just what the poster said here. Just the retail people, all of us, the customers, subsidizing the company. The company gets to pay the driver only $8. The driver still gets the $10 they're expecting. And we don't realize that normally, if the retail person using the app, if the user was not a tipper, the driver would have gotten $10 anyways. So they describe a lot of stuff like that. This poster claims there's a desperation score. If the drivers seem like they're really down on their luck, they'll offer them much less money to deliver. And if they're kind of picky, if they don't pick up orders all the time, they'll offer them more money. So it's kind of like they're preying on the desperation of the drivers. The harder up they are for money, the more they know they'll pick up the orders, even late at night, and they'll offer them even less money, things like that. So people later on claimed that, they ran this through some kind of filter, and the filter said, this is probably AI. I don't know if it really matters. And I posted that down below here. Somebody claimed AI said this was 100% AI generated. That may be the case. I don't even know if it changes anything, because we know this kind of fuckery is happening with, sort of algorithmic, analysis of human behavior. We know this kind of stuff is happening. Wow. Okay. We got a bee in the room. We got a gigantic bee in the room. I just heard it buzzing. I was like, is there a bomb in the room with me about to go off? What is buzzing? It's some kind of a gigantic bee. Oh, wow. It's very large. Hopefully he doesn't attack me. This has been a weird episode. Okay, he's very large. I don't even know how he's still alive at this point. Anyways, he's here. Just so you know, if you hear buzzing, there's a gigantic bee in the room. Anyways, we know. God, he's trying to land on my head. Amazing. Okay. This may get violent in here. This may get violent. There's one bee. There's just one bee, but it's very large. Anyways, we know this kind of manipulation of humans is the context of humans using these kinds of apps that have these abilities, which is pretty much all of them at this point. We know this is a thing that is possible. And therefore, if we're being like sort of wise analysts of, what these tech companies are doing, we have to assume that they're doing these things because it's possible. It's sort of like we can't just tell these things. We can't just tell these companies. We can't just tell these companies to not do evil things. We have to create systems so that they don't do evil things. That's why I think this is so primed for crypto. These kinds of apps that are ripe for this kind of manipulation of human behavior, we need to transition these to blockchains where everything's transparent, right? Like the drivers need to be able to look at the blockchain and see what other drivers are being offered, right? If analysts can sit around and do that for them, of course, the drivers aren't going to have time to do that themselves, but analysts will do it. People who are just going to look at these kind of things. Okay, the bee has landed. Thank God, not on me. Although I'd be okay to try to, we'll say, capture him if he landed on me. But there would be analysts who could look at the blockchain and say, "Hey, look what's happening. They're obviously handicapping this poor driver who is happy to take these orders, at 4 a.m., 4 p.m. This guy's not even sleeping. He's taking so many orders, and they're paying him less, which is just putting him in a worse hole." This is a perfect use case for crypto, even if it's not real. we can't rely on these companies to say they're not doing this. We have to create systems that prevent them from doing it. This is the not don't be evil thing. This is the can't be evil thing that Charles is always talking about. Okay, let's see who else is here. Kristen's here. Hey, Happy New Year, Kristen. Thanks for joining. Tulane Tulip is here. Thanks for joining. Blue Mammal. Yep, a bee attack. The bee has landed. It was so weird. The bee was not moving around at all. I guess he didn't like something I guess he's a big fan of tech companies. He didn't like what I was talking about. Twig says, I believe there's algo manipulation for sure, especially when it's slow. I notice it when I drive. Okay. There's a little confirmation from somebody who actually does drive. There's algo manipulation for sure. This is what I've universally heard from drivers too. I've universally heard them say that. Blue Mammal says, be careful. Yeah. Does show it fear. Does show it fear. They sense it. Okay, I'll try not to show it fear. It's very believable. Web stores mine your IP for pricing, among other marketers too. I've seen the upcharges that food delivery puts on menu prices too. Interesting. Yeah, one of the funny things is, so I have to, obviously I have to do a little bit of international travel when I migrate back and forth to this other place I go to. And it is for sure a thing. If you you get different prices when you use the old VPN, you get offered different prices. That is for sure a thing. There's a lot of algorithmic manipulation. All the stories, you hear all the crazy stories, like, always when you first check the price of a flight, they're going to offer you a really attractive price, and then they're predicting that it's going to take you so many visits before you actually pull the trigger, and the price is just going to get worse, and you're going to assume it's just because you're like a couple days closer to the date of departure, but actually it's them doing the same thing. So we know what's going on here. Sub-Zero says, don't show it fear. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I was thinking aggression. Kristen says, befriend the bee. He just wants to love you. He did not have a very loving look on his face. He was not very loving. Streetwise says, imagine the fuckery happening behind the scenes on the dating apps. Ooh, that's a bad one. I don't even want to think about that. That's pretty dark. That's some Black Mirror stuff for sure. that one could get really dark. Why can't we be friends? Yeah, exactly. Yep. Twig says, I bet dating apps are the worst. Terrible practices among businesses these days. Yep. It's only getting worse. For people who've if you've worked at a tech startup, the conversations that are had within tech startups are, the people having those conversations would probably not want those conversations to be public. I'll put it that way. The bee is just looking for food. There's definitely no food for him in here. So he probably is looking for food. That's a good point. It has to come from public outcry. There would be easy for companies to skip over open blockchain to midnight or something like it and remain shrouded. That's a good point. Maybe privacy will allow us to do the kind of things here we want to do. Although there's a lot of questions about how you pull it off on midnight, because if the company obviously is going to do everything they possibly can to shroud, good verb, shroud those things they don't want the drivers to see. So maybe in that sense, it becomes kind of a policy question. Is there some way we can force them to not obscure that kind of information? That's probably, it's a good point. That's exactly the kind of information they would want to obscure using something like midnight. Troll Toll says there needs to be more transparency. Agreed. Dude, on the Chinese food delivery apps, the drivers can see how often you're checking, and it encourages the driver. Oh, wow. Oh, interesting. I have definitely used apps that are probably very similar to the ones you're describing in other parts of the world. So interesting. Okay, good to know. Dolph B. Wolf, good morning. Good morning. Dolph B. Wolf says, good morning, AOS Hive. Thanks for joining. Wendy's charges more during busy hours and days. The airline ticket algos are crazy and have been brought to light on like CNBC, total scam. Yeah, we all hate that shit, right? We all hate it. It would be really awesome if an airline would come out and just like promise not to do that shit to us. Because it does piss me off when I end up paying, like several $100s more. And I know I've just been the victim of the algorithmic shifting, which is why VPN is so awesome. Surge pricing, that's what the politicians here like to implement, adding taxes to rideshare, DoorDash, streaming, etc. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the problem. I mean, the politicians are going to want to tax those things, and if it makes the price go up, it's kind of a bad incentive because the tax can be more if the price is more. And I get it. I mean, there's certain reasons why surge pricing might be a good idea. You know what I mean? It's like you want to even out usage of the service, right? You don't want everybody to just use Uber, at exactly, if everybody uses Uber at exactly closing time at the local bars, it makes it really difficult when nobody's using it an hour earlier or an hour later and everybody's using it exactly that time. It makes it really hard for Uber to provide good service because you've got to have a bunch of drivers basically sitting there on call, do like one ride. You know what I mean? This isn't really the way it works, but do one ride basically and then be done. Like that doesn't make sense because nobody wants to do that. They want to work for a longer period of time. So if you can have surge pricing that encourages some people, like 20% of the people or whatever to take their ride early, to get out of the bar early, or, to wait till later, there's some utility there, but just to regular surge pricing, but a lot of it's just like straight manipulation for profiteering. Oh, dude, me too. I wish we could just like VPN into a tiny island nation and somehow get lower prices on crypto. That'd be fantastic. Okay, 8 Eclipse. If you turn off the lights, it should immediately land. You don't have a. Okay, that's a good point. But my monitor will probably have to stay on. So he's landed now. I think I know where he is, and I'm not saying I'm going to assassinate him as soon as we get off this video, but I am saying he might become unalive. He might become unalive. I can see him right now, and he's definitely close to a light. The bee can only be kind. Yeah, we're gonna talk about all of it. We're gonna talk about all the IR news for sure. I worked as an SME for a SaaS startup, subject matter expert for a SaaS startup, and you are right. They would not want most customers to know what data they collect and use. Yeah, I mean, even just the data collection is fucking crazy. And even just some of the policy discussions, when you hear them talking about the ways in which they want to manipulate their customers, that's the part that, and I'm not talking about any particular startup here. I'm just saying the conversations that are had about how to manipulate the customers are outrageous. They are outrageous. And people would definitely not want those to be public. Okay, remember the Paul Tudor Jones report about the AI conference where all the heads of the companies expect greater than 50% chance of disaster? Chatham House rules. Where all the heads of the companies expect greater than 50% chance of disaster. Ooh, that's scary. Yeah, that's Chatham House rules is good for getting the straight information for sure. Hey, Rodrigo, cheers. Thanks for joining from Chile. Wouldn't it be awesome if it wasn't like using a GeoCities website to book through your credit card's portal? That would be fucking helpful if it didn't feel like GeoCities. That would also be helpful. Cam, thanks for joining. Uber at 1:30 a.m. on January 1st. Yeah, I've definitely done that many, many, many times when I was a younger man. I definitely took a lot of those 1:30 a.m. January 1st Ubers for sure. Point taken on the surge pricing. However, in Chicago area, it's insane, especially at Barclay. Yeah, I agree. It's like horrible for us as the users. It's like horrible. I agree. Severed Tom Cardiac. Sub-Zero says there's a VPN life hack for cheaper airfare. I've just been using Google Flight like a fool. Yeah, try your VPN. Definitely try a VPN. Matt says just lay a piece of banana on the table. Ooh, I like the sounds of that. Bait him to his death. To his death. The bee didn't kill itself. We'll see about that. If there are no witnesses, pretty sure there's no cameras in this room. So we'll see. We'll see how the bee. I've actually, I don't want to get into too much detail. There is a person who resides here who would have objections to the bee assassination. I'll put it that way. Surge prices make sense for some things, but if the user isn't clearly shown how to make their purchases cheaper, it's something different. Yep, agreed. They're going to track what people are willing to pay and tailor pricing to customers. Yep, absolutely. I was in Texas and it was way cheaper at the same time, like considerably. Yep, agreed. Definitely, there's regional pricing. Wu-Tang Killer Bees. Basically, yep. Society is backwards. All government transactions should be transparent. All personal transactions should be private. I'm kind of with you. Greetings, Omar. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining. Okay, we got a lot to get through, guys. I keep getting sidetracked with the comments. I apologize. Okay, let's get into some of the crazy world news going on right now. So I know some of you are just here for crypto content, but this shit's too important. We have to address this. If I had enough time of the day, I would definitely do like an IR video, an international relations, geopolitics video every single day. I would do a UAP video and I'd do a crypto video. Obviously, I only have time to do one, so I've been doing crypto videos, but sometimes things happen that are too important. This is too important. We got to talk about this. This is like historical world changing shit. We got to talk about it. So bees love oranges. Okay, thank you for this advice about the fruit, guys. I will actually try that because I may be forced to capture him as opposed to assassinate him, depending on if a certain person heard me talking about this or not. I may be forced to do a capture, a Maduro style capture. As opposed to a straight assassination. So we started seeing on New Year's Eve, before that even, but really started picking up steam on New Year's Eve, we started seeing amazing images coming out of Iran. And if they're, when I see stuff like this, all I can say is that my heart is with the Iranian people. My fingers are crossed. It's finally time for them to rejoin the international community. You can have whatever kind of thoughts you want to have, whatever kind of view you want to have on, the US military as the world police. I mean, there have been very funny movies made about that topic and, some really real criticism about maybe that's not the best way to order global society. You can have whatever kind of views you want on that, but James is here. Thanks for joining. Matt says freedom, but this is how I feel, right? It's like you Josh is talking about rendition of this bee. Dude, I might be forced into rendition. I would prefer assassination, but I might be forced into rendition. America, fuck yeah. That is the show. Matt Parker and Trey Stone made one of the funniest shows of all time about America World Police. But however you feel about this, you cannot deny that this is a group of people from an ancient and powerful civilization, right? The Persian civilization, the people of the country of Iran today, whether Persian or other, there are other groups in Iran today, but the people of Iran today come from this amazing history, this amazing empire, this amazing civilization. And ever since 79, they have suffered under this incredible lack of freedom, and there's a long historical conversation you can have about the Shah and Savak and US, relationships with the Shah. And, it's like a lot of our fathers, a lot of our fathers who were, our father's generation, there were a lot of Americans working in, this kind of field of international relations. And, the US was doing a lot of things in Iran, and you can have whatever kind of view of that you want. You can have whatever kind of view you want of the Shah and what Savak was doing, all those kind of things. That's a long historical conversation that people in the field of international political science have been having for decades and decades and decades since 1979. But the fact of the matter is, whatever you think of the revolution and Khomeini taking power, all those things, the people of Iran have suffered under an incredible lack of freedom since then. And man, all I can do is hope that this is the time when they get to return to the international community, because while they've suffered internally inside Iran, the people have suffered incredible oppression, ever since the revolution, basically, depending on how you want to measure it historically, especially recently. And by recent, I mean this century, whatever it's internally, they've suffered an incredible amount of oppression. And on top of that, Iran has been sanctioned for probably a lot of your entire lifetimes. A lot of the younger people on this channel. And it's like, for people like this, all you can hope for is for their freedom. And at the same time, it's like freedom from the regime that is oppressing them. And as soon as the regime is gone, they can return to the international community and they'll no longer suffer under the economic sanctions. It's like man, all I can do is cross my fingers and hope that this happens. So yes, freedom, Matt Damon. Yeah, I hope it won't become like the Arab Spring. Often the cure is worse than the sickness for the average civilian. Yeah, I've talked before about how, going back to even before the U.S. intervention in Iraq, and I'm not trying to draw any parallels between. I'm not going to draw any parallels tonight between Venezuela or Iran and Iraq. The whole yellow cake fiasco and our participation in Iraq. I've said in the past on this channel, political science professors, even in the U.S. before 9/11, one of the things I heard them say many, many times was the one thing the U.S. shouldn't do is intervene in Iraq because you've got Sunnis, Shias, and Kurds, and all hell's going to break loose if Saddam is gone. And of course, the U.S. intervened, based on this. We won't get into the whole yellow cake thing, but the U.S. did what all the political scientists were saying should not be done. And of course, they did it. It happened in the worst way possible. And what we got was exactly what Frazek is describing here. Obviously, that was not the Arab Spring. That was, a worse case of what Frazek's describing than the Arab Spring. But, we saw similar things in Libya and, all over the Arab world during the Arab Spring. So your point is well taken, my friend. That's what I'm saying. But man, this is a case where the people are suffering, the regime is a threat and destabilizing force throughout the entire Middle East. It's like all I can do is cross my fingers and hope that now is the time the Iranian people get to rejoin the international community. So it's been a long time coming. Iran used to be a vacation destination back in the 70s. Yeah, if you want to see something incredible, Pucky Hawk is talking about something really incredible. And a lot of you are probably too young to understand this or know about this if you haven't been exposed to the history of Iran at all. But just go back and look at pictures. Just look at pictures of Tehran look at Tehrani's prior to 79. You're going to see some incredible pictures. You're going to think you're looking at pictures of Europe. You're going to think you're looking at pictures of Europe. Compare those to pictures of Tehran in 2024. In 2024, you'll also see some pictures that you might think is Europe, but man, very different, very different. Brown Beardo says that people have to band together and tread carefully to put the right people in office. Venezuela will have to do the same. The alternative is more of the same. I mean, technically, Iran elected a democratic leader. It was the U.S. who toppled that leader to install their puppet leader. Oh yeah. I mean, there's a long history we can talk about the history of the Pahlavi dynasty, leading up to the revolution in 79, and even worse, the subject of what, the thing that people immediately go to is what Savak did, but that's for another day. I'll let the historians have been covering that since 79. That's all been public, but that's what are we at? 47 years ago. That's 47 years. It's almost half a century ago. Trump will help the people if they need. Yeah. So let's jump ahead to that. So this is what a lot of the protesters are hoping for. Obviously, I'm not in Tehran right now, but a lot of the protesters seem to be hoping for this. This is Reza Pahlavi, the son of the Shah. At his father's death, he was sworn in Egypt, I believe, sworn in as the Shah. So if you consider that to be a valid succession event, a lot of people would argue that he is the Shah of Iran, the current day Shah. So I think this is what a lot of people are thinking. And certainly, given the US's relationship with the Shah, I think a lot of people who were around in those days and dealing with the Shah's regime, this is what they've been thinking all along, that one day the day would come when the clerics would no longer be running things in Iran, and we get this little kid who was, I don't know how old at the time his photo was taken, like 11, 14, whatever, would come along and be like, well, motherfuckers, been waiting 47 years for this. And that kind of is the case. So, then we saw this. So the protests really started cranking up, and we saw this out of the White House, which kind of surprised me. So there's a typo in here. He says, if Iran shots and violently kills peaceful protesters, which is their custom, the United States of America will come to the rescue. We are locked and loaded and ready to go. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. And we all know what came next after this, a little something in Venezuela. But typo aside, the fact that Trump was already threatening intervention on the side of the people was pretty amazing. I think a lot of other administrations would have just stayed quiet. Obviously, we're doing things all the time in what we would call rogue states like Iran. We're doing things all the time, and they are not on the side of the regime. We're doing things in the background. But for an administration to come right out so early and say this, the United States will come to the rescue. We are locked and loaded. This was kind of astounding. This was kind of amazing. Trump, those guys in Washington right now, they're wild boys. So when they say stuff like this, and we found out a day later, when they say stuff like this, you got to take it a little seriously. You got to take it a little seriously. I don't even think that's tinfoil hat time, blue mammal. You got to take it a little seriously. Josh mixes. Now we need Aussies to rise up against their globalist overlords. Should we start covering? Should we start covering Aussie protesters who are rising up against their globalist overlords? That'd be pretty funny if there was a channel that just covered that like we're covering these protests. That would be kind of hilarious. Aid is coming. They have to secure and stabilize. The people are all for the U.S. We are close to them also. Yep. And UFC at the White House. Adam Olson pointing out UFC at the White House. Yeah, this is a pretty big deal. These are wild boys. So if you are the current regime, you need to be pretty worried. So it turned out. So Trump posted this. The clerics not happy. Khamenei had his guy go to the UN and was like, Iran has delivered a letter to Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, as well as members of the UN Security Council, protesting a recent statement made on social media by US President Donald J. Trump, in which he threatened to intervene in ongoing protests. What did they do? They sent a letter on their little letterhead, their Islamic regime of Iran letterhead, to the Secretary General of the United Nations, which is the right thing to do. Is sort of an automatic thing you're going to do when somebody says something like that on Twitter. If you're Iran, this is what you're automatically going to do. Does it have any effect whatsoever? No. And it's kind of hilarious because basically Trump's little note said they can't kill their own people. And to them, that's something they need to object to, which is kind of hilarious. So then we saw this, right? We also saw this on January 1st. So Mamdani comes along and he makes the comment that will probably define him forever. Whoever wrote this speech should have been fired the moment after these words were spoken. I'm sure they weren't. I'm sure they were applauded for their courageous bravery or something. But he said, we'll replace rugged individualism with collectivism. I was like, man, if you want every single person who's not in one of about 5 states to just put rugged individualist in their Twitter profiles, this is the way to do it. I'm like, when I hear stuff like this, I'm just like, man, fuck that noise. Like, rugged individualism forever. Like, what's so funny about this? This is the pattern we've always seen, right? It's you have very rich elites, like this guy. Famously, what did they say? He didn't have a full-time job until he was in his 30s or something. His mom is a famous film director. This is the most, coddled human being you can possibly imagine. And of course, he's the guy who comes along and tells you that rugged individualism is no good. We need to replace it with the warmth. We need to replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism, which was such hilariously bad timing. This was incredibly bad timing. We're going to talk about why in just a second. Trump is definitely building the rep required for a statement like that to work. Yeah, he knew he was going to be building it a couple days later. We can quibble about whether he knew exactly when this was going to go down, but I kind of think he knew it was pretty imminent when he wrote that. They say that they said they'd been studying Maduro's routine for months and months and months, and they were waiting for a few different things to sort of align so they would have, so that it'd be very predictable, because his routine, depended on various things happening, and they wanted to be absolutely certain that they would understand all the factors, so the trigger was just for these certain things to line up. So you could argue that, they've kind of been arguing they didn't know exactly when this was going to happen, and that's why they couldn't notify Congress. Marco Rubio, I think, and Pete Hegseth have been kind of saying that, but then Trump came along and said, actually, we just thought that Congress would leak everything, so we didn't tell Congress, which is pretty funny. But our strongly worded letter had several tons of explosives attached. That's true. That's true. Good luck. The UN always was and always will be a complete joke. Yeah, no enforcement powers. Definitely. This guy in New York is dumb. The appointee defended 9/11 terrorists, didn't he? Yeah. So the guy he appointed as legal counsel was defense counsel for for Al-Qaeda terrorist, for an Al-Qaeda terrorist. Yep. That's absolutely true. It's kind of wild. I said, yeah, popcorn while New York City burns. Yeah, I said New York City voters are not serious people. And I've actually talked to people. Who are kind of in the socio-cultural segment that would vote for Mamdani. I talked to one guy. He's actually a professor. He's actually a tenured professor. And he admitted to me that if he were in New York, he would have voted for Mamdani. And I mentioned some of these things to him, and he just kind of like, this dude's a professor, tenured professor, and he just kind of like shrugged it off, like, oh, that's nonsense. But literally, I'm like, bro, his counsel was defense counsel for an Al-Qaeda terrorist, and the dude is just like, like, doesn't even make sense to him. He's like, no, Mamdani's good. But then you see stuff like this. It's like people made the point. The mainstream media went out of its way to convince us he is not a communist. That there's somehow this strong distinction between his brand of democratic socialism and communism. But when you say stuff like, we'll replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism, you're basically making yourself unelectable anywhere outside of a few places in the country, just a few places in the country. Clown guy in New York City. The sad thing is there is no inherent conflict between individualism and collectivism. Individualists are often the most compassionate people. He's creating a conflict where none needs to be made. Yeah, I mean, it's a terrible choice. Polarizing anybody who believes in rugged individualism. It's like rugged individualism is something we cite as a virtue in this country. It's terrible idea, terrible rhetoric for him to use. Mamdani and Chicago mayor will be best friends. Probably. Mamdani is the case study for midterm elections when good people forget or choose to not vote. Very low turnout, but he did win based on the numbers. And they had a terrible candidate. They had a terrible candidate on the other side. It was like ridiculous. Adam Olson says professors live in a glass box. Very true. Very true. Okay. It got hilarious immediately, right? The very next day, Kirill Dmitriev, who is special envoy of Putin and also the head of the Russian Sovereign Wealth Fund, posted this: "Dear Comrade Mamdani, just a friendly reminder that this has been tried before." Hilarious, dude. When a special envoy of Putin is clowning you on X, you fucked up, right? It's hilarious. It's hilarious when somebody in this position is talking about how you're such a fucking commie. Hilarious. No one could have predicted that this is what 2026 would look like in the capital of capitalism in the US. It's crazy. Some people think this. Yes, some people are surely going to say he's dangerous. Let him run for president. I kind of suspect this is why Trump immediately invited him to the White House. I think Trump was like, please God, let them run this guy. Let them run this guy for the White House. Please let them run an AOC Mamdani ticket. I guess they can't. They're both in New York, so they can't really run an AOC Mamdani ticket. But he's like, please, something like that. Either AOC and him, and any combination of those two. Like AOC can be Secretary of State. Please run that ticket. Vanessa says, with all due respect, can we keep the political discussion to a minimum? I thought we were here for. Sorry, Vanessa. I'm a human being. I have views on a lot of things. We're going to talk about a lot of political stuff all the time. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's the way it is. I bet people went out to vote, but no voter has consequences. ID. That's kind of a social platform here. Yeah. I mean, I apologize if you're a strong Mamdani supporter. It's okay. It's okay for us to, it's okay for us to have different opinions on this. But I'm always going to be super fucking opposed to anybody who says things like this. If you're leveraging the verbiage of communism, I'm going to be super opposed to you, and I'll show you. Not to you in particular, but to politicians who are leveraging this kind of rhetoric. I'm going to be super opposed to them, and I'll show you why. Here's why. We fucking know it doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. History has told us this story over and over and over again. When you try to pursue collectivism over rugged individualism, this is what you fucking get. Look at North Korea. This is what you get. This has been proven so many fucking times, right? You can argue, oh, no, it's not like that. It's not that kind of hermit kingdom communism we're talking about. It's, just collectivism, just socialism. We know it fucking doesn't work. The Soviet Union collapsed. China became ultra capitalist. Cuba sucks. Venezuela sucks. It always fails. It always fucking fails. The incentives aren't right. History teaches us this lesson. It's like it's always bad. So I'm always going to oppose these sentiments that tend towards communism. I'm always going to oppose them because it doesn't fucking work, right? It's like I studied the history of the world too much. I already know all the incidents where it has not fucking worked. And I don't ever want us to go in this direction. This sucks. We don't want this. I'll always oppose collectivism, and I'll always be a proponent of capitalism. Capitalism is not a cure for the human condition as it exists inside economic systems. It's not a perfect cure. It's not, but it's so much better than collectivism. It's so much better than all this commie stuff. The commie shit always fails. It always creates misery. It always sucks. So I'm always going to choose rugged individualism and capitalism over collectivism and communism. It's like, it always sucks. This is why. We already know. People have done the experiment too many fucking times. We already know. Okay, Cardano has libertarian basis. Communism is incompatible. This is true. I mean, Cardano is crypto. I would argue is, a lot of the crypto ethos is based very much in the ideals of freedom. I would just say the ideals of freedom. You would argue that libertarianism, small L encompasses, economic freedom plus social freedom. I'm in favor of both those things for sure. And I think a lot of people in crypto are too. Yeah, I agree. I really don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or say anything that's going to make anybody mad. But at the same time, when we're talking about communism versus capitalism, collectivism versus rugged individualism, it's like I have strong feelings on this, so I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie or be silent to not hurt anybody's feelings because these are the stakes. These are the stakes, right? Do you want to be in Seoul? Seoul's fucking awesome. Anybody who's been to Seoul will be like, it's fucking awesome. Anybody who's been to North Korea would be like, it fucking sucks. It's like very stark difference. It's not like people aren't like, oh, Seoul's super fun, but Pyongyang is right up there. Nobody fucking says that, right? Nobody fucking says that. Nobody's like, oh, Havana is an economic miracle. It's like Havana's doing really well. And, Miami's good, but Havana is an economic, engine. It's amazing. Nobody's saying that shit. Policy is important for crypto, so it does matter a bit. Yeah, I think so. I mean, one of the big trends on this channel, one of the big points of this channel is that greater freedom produces greater prosperity. And I see crypto as an engine of freedom. It does create greater economic freedom. It allows us to do things we can't do on the TradFi rails. It's greater freedom. I believe that creates greater prosperity. So that's one of the big themes of this channel. This is breaking down the post-World War II order and making spheres of influence again. No more America world police. I think that's true. I think that's very true. And you notice, so I think America is not going to be the world police any longer. I think I've discussed it many times on this channel. America is no longer willing to do it. It doesn't make sense. in the post-Cold War context, because we needed to, I've talked about this before, so I won't go into too much detail, but we needed to bribe everybody around the world to help us in our opposition to the USSR and communism. So we had to bribe everybody by being the world police and patrolling the blue water trade routes. Now everything is devolving. We no longer have a reason to bribe the whole world and do the world police thing. I think we are going to be the police of the Western Hemisphere, though. The Western Hemisphere is going to be within our trade sphere. I think there are going to be like these trade cartels, and the US's trading sphere, is going to be its allies, the Five Eyes nations plus Japan, plus South Korea, plus a few other countries in Asia, plus, whoever stays with us from the EU, that's going to be our trading alliance. And the Western Hemisphere is going to be a part of that. So we'll probably continue to be Western Hemisphere police. China is ultra capitalist. If you've ever been in Asia, around Chinese businessmen, it's ultra capitalist, dude. They might call themselves communists, but the shit that is going on, it's super authoritarian. Like it's you do not have freedom the way you do in the US, but there's a lot. It's ultra capitalist. Dysfunctional mom. I bet communists would have loved to use blockchain for transparency. Yeah, actually, if like the KGB could have imposed a Soviet central bank digital currency and everything ran on the blockchain, they probably would have loved it. Putin would have loved it when he was in the KGB. The warmth of collectivism always seems to have a wall to keep people in instead of people out. Yep, exactly. Well put. Great segue. Yep. CrunchyCast is 5 a.m. in the UK. First day back to the fiat mines. I'm so sorry. That sucks. I'm so sorry. It's never been done right. Corruption is built in. Yeah, I mean, corruption is always there. Whenever you have communism, it's always like heavy dose of corruption. And it's so weird because if you were an alien and came down to Earth and somebody described capitalism and communism, it would take a few logical steps to even understand why there's so much more corruption in communism. But goddamn, there is. God damn it. Like historically, so much more. Bindocam says, greetings, fellow dwarf. I think this is to, the other people who are hitting the fiat mines. Any ideas with when we are going to see some crypto bills get approved? Okay, so the market structure bill going to the Senate, there's supposed to be a markup on the 15th. So the 15th is the date that everybody's targeting for that. So we've still got 11 days. We've got to wait 11 days, and then we're going to have some movement on the market structure bill, which is the Senate, basically the Senate version of the Clarity Act. So we'll see that in 11 days. I think the market's at a turning point, another fake out. We didn't dump for once on a Sunday. It feels good, doesn't it? I have no idea. ETFs, we'll see. The whole discussion is a little more nuanced. Americans like to call Europe socialist. Yeah, Americans like to say that. It's like we kind of there's this Americans definitely fall into this seductive thing where we just sort of equate everything across the spectrum of like very light diet socialism to hardcore communism. We kind of equate it all as just like some commie nonsense. And it's pretty funny. I think a lot of Americans sort of engage in that because they don't understand the difference, but also a lot of engage in it because it's just kind of funny to call, like diet socialists commies, just because it's like, it has such a weird history in the US because we had this whole Red Scare where they were like literally purging people in the 50s, over communism. People are more aware of that now because of the Oppenheimer movie, when, a Peaky Blinder got accused of being a communist. But the head Peaky Blinder got accused of being a communist. So people are more aware of it now. But we have a really funny and kind of horrible in many ways history with communism in the US and accusing people of communism. So partially when I do it, it's kind of because it's like so hilarious because there's such a huge difference between, hardcore communism and sort of the diet, what I would jokingly call diet socialism that we see in a lot of Europe. So only in some fairy tale. I look like a damn lumberjack. Guess I am rugged. Yeah, I'm happy to embrace rugged individualism. I always have. I've always jokingly used that term. So as like an ideal to live up to. And Mom Donnie is just like willing to polarize the idea of being that. He doesn't realize that a lot of people would like to imagine they could live up to that ideal. Adam also says, stop being a rational thinker, listen to the view and eat your checkers. Freedom. Yeah, no, I agree. When things like this happen, it's very impactful on markets globally. So we need to be aware of gigantic world events going on because it's impactful. It has something to do with the market. So, and it's also as a human being, I think it's worth discussing these things. Eat your checkers. Dorian, thanks for joining. Good morning. Good morning. JP Morgan is putting out a negative light on the 2026 economy. We've seen a lot of doomer predictions from TradFi institutions for 2026. We have. It's a little scary. I'm not gonna lie. Communism is great until you run out of other people's money. So Vietnam is another one, right? Vietnam is another one. Super capitalist. Super capitalist. If you've ever been anywhere near Vietnam in Southeast Asia, super capitalist. It's easier to open a business than in the US. Easier to open a business, man. JPM is so cheesy sometimes. But you have been adopting increasingly capitalist policies over time. Yeah, I would argue it's super capitalist. That's why everybody loves to do business there. Everybody in the Western world loves to do business there because it's so capitalist, so easy to do business. Diet socialist leads to commies was not completely off base, but it is hilarious. Jamie Dimon always talked crap about crypto. Action speaks louder than words. Overall, with current macro economy and war going on, are you bullish or bearish for Cardano in 2026? What I strongly don't believe is that people can really predict. I don't think it matters whether anybody's bullish or bearish. Sentiment matters, but you know what? A sentiment changes on a dime. Go back to the start of 2025 when we were above $1. Everybody was super bullish on 2025, and then shit just didn't work out. In fact, it went strongly in the opposite direction. So I don't believe it's predictive. I don't believe like somebody like me being bullish or bearish is predictive at all. I don't think it has any predictive value. So that's why I don't offer it, because I don't believe it has any predictive value for you guys. And I don't want to blow smoke, you know? I don't want to blow smoke on people on this channel. I only want to say things that I think have some value. So communism has flavors, just like capitalism, just like socialism. All governments are conglomeration of all ideas. I agree. Pure communism sucks, but everything is a balance. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like you could say that about a lot of things though, and get to some pretty bad results. Like you could say like, oh, ultra processed food, there's degrees of that. And, it's like you need to have balance. So you should have some ultra processed foods along with like actual foods. And I think that's a wrong result. So I get what you're saying, and there's value in what you're saying, but you can get to some pretty bad results when you say, oh, there's a spectrum of this thing and we need to have balance. So we need some part of that spectrum. I don't think that's true with something like ultra processed foods. I don't think humans should be eating it, but your rationale would apply to ultra processed foods as well. That's why I can't buy into that. We enacted a community project to fight communism. Now that we won, we are becoming isolationist again. Yeah, I mean, it sounds harsh to put it that way, but Omar, I think you are correct. You are my rep. Have you enjoyed the process this past yearish? Yeah, no, I mean, being a DRep is, I think because I come on this channel and I talk about, what I think about things in Cardano, it's pretty easy to be a DRep because so we've got a lot more to cover, but I'll jump into this really quickly. The problem with no, I won't say most people. The problem with some DReps, I'll say some, and you can decide what you think the percentage is. A lot of DReps just kind of put their finger in the air and try to decide which way the wind's blowing. And they're like, okay, everybody is going in this direction. I need to go in that direction too. So you've got that kind of DRep. That definitely exists. You see a lot of that. And then you've got the guys like me who are just going to vote the way they feel no matter what. So it's pretty easy for me because I'm already on these videos saying how I feel about everything. Like you can see, I've already pissed off people in this channel by talking shit about collectivism. I've already pissed off at least one person, and I didn't mean to piss you off. Actually, you're probably a very nice person, and you probably have, valuable views on all these things. But I'm not afraid to piss people off. I'm going to say what I think no matter what, even if every other DRep feels differently. If I feel strongly about something, I'm going to vote my conscience every single time. So it's pretty easy for me. I'm going to vote my conscience no matter what. And you saw that with a lot of the budget stuff. Like I voted for a much smaller budget and people got really mad. I didn't give a damn, mainly projects. I did not get very, I want to say almost zero emails from normal people who are mad about my voting for a smaller budget. But projects who were going to be recipients of that budgets, they got really mad. The people who are getting the money got really mad. The people who are paying the money, all of us, the community, did not get mad. So, but I don't care. Even if projects I like get mad at me over something like that, I'm still going to vote my conscience no matter what. Like no amount of pressure is going to make me go with the flock. I'm going to vote my conscience no matter what. So it's pretty easy for me. Matt says, I can understand the banks are frustrated or more so confused about how to handle crypto, but they should just support policy. I wish they would. That'd be great. Social Security, Medicare. Yeah, I mean, there's collectivist things we do. Like the better example, people always go to those. The better example, in my opinion, is road maintenance, right? Like, it would be more individualist of me to just get with my neighbors and pay a private company to do the road maintenance on my road and tell the rest of the city I live in to go to hell, right? Like the people in neighborhoods within mine, if they're poorer than me, I could say, go to hell. You guys don't make as much money. You guys should have potholes in your street. And I'm going to pay privately for mine because I don't give a damn about your street. I actually don't want that. Like I want them to have a street that's well paved, like my street, right? I'm willing to pay for their street. I'm willing to pay more than my share for their street to not have potholes. Like I want them to have a fire department. I want to help pay for their fire department so that their children don't die in a house fire. I want paramedics. I want them to have paramedics that come to their neighborhood. These are all collectivist things. So there are always going to be things that we want to be collectivist about. There is always going to be a spectrum, but that doesn't mean it's like the processed food thing, right? Like there are some things I don't want to pay for, right? There's some things I don't want to pay for. Like, do I want to pay for crazy social agenda stuff? No, I don't want to pay for that. I want to pay for the ambulance, the paramedics, the fire department, the street. I want them to have all those things, right? Just like I want all citizens to have those things. I want to be collectivist about that. So there's always gonna be things we're collectivist about and not, right? It's like if Putin went insane and he attacked Alaska, like I could just be like, to hell with Alaska. They can fend for themselves. But I'm not like that. I want the US military to cover the entire US, right? To defend the entire US. That's a collectivist thing too. So it's not so much a matter of, it's not black and white. It's not binary. You are going to be collectivist about some things, but that's not what he's saying. What he's talking about is very different. And you can tell that it's disingenuous to say that like he's not talking about something wildly different from that. It's not intellectually honest to say that that's what he has in mind. Ultra capitalism sucks too. Yeah, capitalism is not a perfect cure for the human condition inside economic systems. It's not great. It's like horrible. I would argue that I've talked ad nauseum about wage slavery and how much the fiat mines suck, right? But capitalism is exponentially better than this dark area up here. Capitalism is exponentially better than this shit. It's way better. It's not perfect, but it's way better. You guys bullish on cocky wings and snack? And I don't even know what that shit is. I don't even know what you're talking about. Everyone did a community project should read. Everyone did a community project should read Animal Farm. Yeah, that was required reading. I pointed this out on Twitter. Somebody mentioned this. That was required reading when I was a kid. This tells the story of exactly why communism sucks. I think it should still be required reading in high schools today. It's probably not, but it probably should be. So, Okay, here we go. Let's move on. We got a lot to talk about, guys. A lot to talk about. So then the next day happened, and the US, every branch, many different parts of the military, a joint operation encompassing, virtually all of the DoD, the entire DoD was a part of this gigantic joint operation with many planes and naval vessels and different units. And they grabbed Maduro back in the day. This was hilariously called a snatch operation. Now people talk about rendition, but they grabbed Maduro in like the cleanest military operation of this size ever executed, which was kind of incredible. They said that Maduro was going for kind of a bunker thing, and he actually got to the door of the bunker, but he couldn't get inside and get the door closed. That's what Trump was kind of claiming. Sounds like people are all saying, Delta was the one who actually snagged him, but it could have been, whoever, DevGru, Delta, whoever. We've got if you're familiar with the selection pipeline for those guys and what that produces, no surprise that with the support, with the full force of the U.S. Department of Defense, they could easily march in. Oh, the bee's back. I guess he doesn't like me talking about the joint operation here. Maybe Maduro sent the bee. I'm not gonna lie. As soon as I started talking about this, he came back to life. He came back awake. But no surprise that with the full force of the Department of Defense and so many of our servicemen and women participating in a giant operation like this, it was so well planned that they would easily be able to grab Maduro and bring him back like this. The fact that the operation seemed to be so clean is the amazing part, but they definitely got Maduro. Radiation is a spectrum, legalized radium. Yeah, this is actually good. This is actually a pretty good analog too, because I'm more than happy to do things when I need them to do, a calcium score. So I've been on carnivore now for 6 years. I've been a carnivore for 6 years. And last year, people will remember this if they were around the channel back then. Last year, after 5 years, I decided I should do a calcium score on my heart because everybody kept telling me, I was probably plugging my arteries. So I got a calcium score on my heart and 0% plaque in any of my arteries. My heart is perfect, but that involves a slight dose of radiation, right? So it is a spectrum. I let the dentist do x-rays of my teeth every once in a while. I am willing to get the calcium score on my heart. That trade-off seemed worth it. But at the same time, I don't think, they should be selling, polonium at the grocery store or anything like that, right? They're definitely two different things. So everyone should read Animal Farm. Okay. It is funny, though, if you think how crypto was partially invented as a tool against capitalism, intellectual debate never hurts me no matter who I argue. So is it true, though? Crypto was invented as a tool against capitalism? Was it? Or was it invented as a tool against debasement? I would argue it's a tool against debasement, and that central bank debasement, central bank monetary manipulation is not necessarily a part of capitalism, right? Because famously, any government, communist, capitalist, socialist, whatever, they can all engage in debasement, right? It's not necessarily a thing that's part of capitalism. It's a thing that central banks can do, whether they're in a capitalist system, a communist system, or whatever. I would argue it's more about that, and that crypto is more like a technology. It's not really an alternative to capitalism. It's a technology that's an alternative to monetary manipulation by central banks. So that's my position. But yeah. When I wouldn't vote for sweetheart loans for meme coins, people got real mad. But only people who were a part of that community. Matt says, I don't do crypto. I'm just listening and learning because it's coming soon to my bank and I need to know. Oh, interesting. Matt, thank you for joining. I appreciate you joining, actually. It's very nice to know. I appreciate it. So if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up. You can always send me private messages on X. Send me private messages. And if you have a different X account, if I can't tell that you're the same person, just let me know what your name is on here and I'll remember. So, but yeah, feel free to send me questions. Airlines charging extra for stowing bags, shrinking seats, market-based pricing based on where you live, what time it is, skyrocketing medical costs, pharmaceutical prices, etc. As I said, balance. Yeah, these things are all bad. These things are all bad. But if you have centralized price control, you get much worse results historically. You know, you know, um, the factory in the Soviet Union making more boots. You know, I'm sure people will say that this story is spurious, but we have these examples from the Soviet Union, like, you know, the archetypical example people give is a factory that made boots, and the amount of boots they produced were so far in excess of the demand for boots that these boots just lay vacant or whatever it was. But, you know, centralized price control produces some pretty bad things too. You were paying for Somalian lampposts. Representative democracy, did they represent? Not these days. Congress is a joke. Yeah, I mean, you know, representative democracy has its problems too. There's definitely corruption. It's poor strategy for a proposer to thrash and whine for losing a vote. Take the feedback and come back with a better proposal, or come up with something new that the network can get behind. Yep, I agree with that. Taxes are spent in the wrong areas. Sadly, when it runs dry, there's nothing left for its hardworking citizens. There are plenty of examples. True. Incidentally, democracy and republic are practical. Yeah, we use them as synonyms. There are some important differences. Like, a lot of people like to, you know, sort of snobbishly point out the US is not a democracy, we're a republic, you know, and there are some differences. And there's a reason we have this saying, you know, what's the best form of government? You know, a republic if you can keep it, kind of thing. You know, versus direct democracy. Direct democracy and a representative republic are definitely two different things. I'm more interested in the payment infrastructure and systems for crypto and banks, cross-border applications. Okay, yeah. We definitely talk about payment infrastructure a lot in Cardano. So that's, I mean, the biggest area, the thing that devs love to build the most in all of crypto, including in Cardano, is, you know, basically it's DeFi, but a part of that is the payment infrastructure. They love to build out loan platforms and swap platforms, but if you're talking about cross-border applications, obviously there's, you know, swapping, basically what we would call swapping, but, you know, transfers between different currencies basically. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in crypto that I think you'd be interested in. Except pigs. Are you talking about Animal Farm? In Animal Farm, the problem is the pigs end up, basically the animals take over the farm. This is a TL. It's been, God, 30 years since I've read this probably, but in Animal Farm, basically the animals take over the farm and the pigs move into the farmer's house. And then after a little while, they become sort of indistinguishable from the farmer. They start walking on two legs and they change all the ideology, and basically their tyranny becomes as bad as the farmer's tyranny, kind of thing. Have a great night, AOS. Severed Tom Cardiac has got to get ready for the fiat mines. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining. No, I mean, it's incredible for a mission this size, for an operation this size, to not lose any equipment, even crazy. I mean, you think about like the small size of the operation, the small number of people who were sort of, we can say, I mean, there's, you know, of course, a large amount of support people, but think about how much smaller the operation to get rid of bin Laden was. And we lost a Blackhawk in that operation, just in that operation. I think they had to leave behind a Blackhawk, if I remember right. So it's kind of incredible that this went the way it was. Thank goodness for no casualties. The most important part, for sure. Frazek says, that is also my take to Matt, but I fear it will take a disaster for it to become a reality. There are too much regulations blocking that sort of implementation. All right, do you mean like cross-border payment rails? Chinese manipulated their currency all the time. They're like the worst. They're the worst. In fact, economists largely can't even trust the Chinese numbers on their like public float in their currency. Like nobody really even trusts the number of the amount of the currency in circulation, because they're so worried about the manipulation. Carnivore diet, yes, no pasta. Sadly, no pasta. Pasta is delicious, but have not had it for 6 years. Central bank debasement is not capitalism, but socialists are the real criminals. Capitalists are just more sophisticated criminals. No, I mean, I would argue the same thing about crime. Crime exists in both. I think it's like, it's extraneous and automatically included in both, right? When I say extraneous, I just mean like it's separate. It exists as a totally separate element. It's going to exist in both. You know what I mean? It's like saying, are there farmers in socialism and capitalism? Like, yes, but it's not exclusive to one or the other. Right. Centralized price control can be bad, but it can be good. Like controlling insulin prices. It's arguable. It's arguable. I mean, I think the problem is when the discussion has to involve, when you don't have monopolies. You could argue that you don't need to control prices where you don't have monopolies. But where you do have monopolies, then you've got this problem. You either need to bust the monopolies or control prices, because the monopolistic power is going to jack up prices. It's in their, they have every incentive to jack up prices. So you either need to bust their monopoly or you need to control prices. So it's like, pick your poison, right? Again, the balance thing, I think, is a slippery slope. Howdy from ATX. Thanks for joining. About the goal of crypto, I always felt that a government adopting crypto would have prevented something like the 2008 bank bailout, but your position as an anti-inflation tool is well taken. Yeah, no, I mean, you hit it on the head. This is Frazek. This is exactly why what Satoshi wrote into, as you will know, I'm sure you know, what Satoshi wrote into the Genesis block was chancellor on the brink of third bailout for banks, right? That's what he wrote in the Genesis block. So the bailouts he was very concerned with. I guess they're really intertwined though, because you can't really do the bailouts the way we've been doing them, including in that case, the GFC, unless you inflate the hell out of the currency. Like the only way to take on that much debt and to cover those holes, to fill those holes, is by manipulative, like oppressive inflation. Once politicians worked out they could promise voters more stuff to buy votes, society was doomed. We entered a debt spiral where each generation is borrowing from the next to finance ridiculous stuff. True. Charles is not going. He's just not posting on X anymore. He's going to be around totally. He's just not posting on X. So Twitter. Charles is a very passionate guy who wears his heart on his sleeve, and he just gets too tied up in the Twitter debate. So he's just not on Twitter anymore. He's just hanging out in X Spaces on YouTube and in the Discord for midnight. But he's just left X. That's it. Hi AOS, are you going back to fiat mines? Yeah, so I started doing a little freelance work in the fiat world last week. But I might have to go back like strictly to a real fiat mining job. When that happens, I don't know yet, but I have had to start freelancing a little bit. Heard Charles. Okay, yep, I just answered that. AOS Bank. Can we bank with each other through the stake pool? Through the stake pools? Definitely Cardano stake pools are not set up for that, but somebody could build something. Somebody could build something. I prefer it not be. I think the best thing is for it to not be directly integrated in the stake pool, to be because Ouroboros is working great. We should probably not mess up Ouroboros. And the banking thing, we can engage in certain types of financial activities together. And in fact, maybe not financial, but commercial activities. More on that later. More on us doing commercial activities with each other later. And Ulrich, thank you for joining. James says all United States citizens should be transparent on how it's spent and on a blockchain so we can verify, but they still too much for black budget operations. All true. Oh. Okay, sorry guys. Sorry guys, I'm back. That was actually not the mic switch. That one was not the mic switch. Can you guys hear me now? I think you can hear me now. That one was not the mic switch. That one we just kind of like lost power, and I'm not sure what was going on there, but we definitely lost power for a second. I just jumped ahead in the comments, but we'll move on. Let me know. Let me make sure you can. Okay, yep. Sound check clear. Thanks, BinoCam. Yep. Dorian, thanks. Brown Beardo, thanks. Yep. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, that one was not the mic switch. That one we just kind of like lost power. But let's go back and try to finish off some of these. Let's try to go back, and the bee is attacking AOS. Yeah, that one, I'd be really mad if the bee came over and unhooked the mic, unhooked the power from the mic. That would be an instant assassination of the bee, I think. Okay, let's go back and cover some more of these tabs. We've got a lot left. So after Trump, after the Trump announcement came out that they had snagged Maduro, Mamdani came out with this. I was briefed this morning on the U.S. military capture of Venezuelan President Maduro and his wife, as well as their planned imprisonment in federal custody here in New York City. Unilaterally attacking a sovereign nation is an act of war and a violation of federal and international law. This blatant pursuit of regime change doesn't just affect those abroad, it directly impacts New Yorkers, including tens of thousands of Venezuelans who call the city home. My focus is their safety and the safety of every New Yorker, and my administration will continue to monitor the situation and issue relevant guidance. This was so fantastic. People, there was a lot of response to this tweet, a lot of negative response, including people like Anthony Pompliano from crypto. A lot of crypto people actually responded to this, and there were a lot of reports that somehow their responses were being hidden. Like in this case, a lot of people probably read Pompliano's response, but he got something like 10,000 likes on his response. Basically says, you should go talk while Nicolas Maduro is in New York. You should go talk to him and ask him about the economic destruction, physical death, and societal decay that took place in Venezuela under his socialist policies. Many of those policies are similar to your policies. We don't need to run some grand experiment of socialism and communism in New York City. You can simply look at Venezuela as an example of what happens under these ideas. He got 10,000 likes, and then he complained that somehow his response to Mamdani was hidden. And he wasn't the only one. Other people complained about this as well. I thought this was hilarious, though, because Mamdani saw this, and he obviously looked at it through the lens of, this is the U.S. going into a Latin American country, and there will be impacts on Venezuelans, in New York and elsewhere, and he implies that the impact could be, a detriment to their safety. Right? He's definitely implying here that the impact of this invasion, which he calls an act of war and a violation of federal and international law, he says he's implying very strongly this could impact the safety of Venezuelans, both in his city and elsewhere. The safety of every New Yorker, like it's a huge safety problem. And the response was hilarious. Mamdani obviously misread this again, because the response was just like amazing celebrations by Venezuelans all around the world, right? All around the world. Venezuelans everywhere coming out and celebrating this like it's the greatest thing that's ever happened in the history of Venezuela, right? And universally, what you see are Venezuelans celebrating the capture of Maduro. Why are they so happy about this? They're not enjoying the warmth of collectivism. They're fleeing. They are jubilant at the end of collectivism. Why is this the case? Why are they so jubilant about the end of collectivism? So Jay Marie, who is a member of the Army of Spies, he is on this channel all the time. In the comments, he posted this video. It's a great video. Just watch this video. It's set to some beautiful music, perfect music for this. Just shows celebrations, Venezuelans celebrating it. Here's a video of a guy. His wife wakes him up at 5 a.m. She tells him Maduro's been captured. He doesn't even believe it. He calls her a liar. He calls her a liar many times. He says lies. He can't believe it. Why are people so jubilant? Well, when you dig a little deeper, you're going to find posts like this. This guy says, whenever someone talks about Venezuela, keep this in mind. This is a Venezuelan person. He's a Venezuelan person. He says, whenever someone talks about Venezuela, keep this in mind. Maduro is responsible for all this. 36,800 victims of torture and state violence, 18,305 political detainees, 10,000 extrajudicial executions, 468 murders in protests, 8,000 registered human rights violations, 8 million displaced Venezuelans, 400 censored media outlets, 90% of population poverty, 50% in extreme poverty, 3 unrecognized presidential elections, $3 minimum wage. If you know any Venezuelans, if you talk to Venezuelans, you hear exactly this. You don't hear a bunch of people saying, oh, that's not true. I'm a super Maduro fan. You hear that from various shades of commies in North America and in Europe. That's where you hear that from. You don't hear Venezuelans saying they love Maduro. Maduro's made it wonderful. What you see is jubilant celebration. They're not in fear of their safety. For the first time ever, they're hopeful about their safety. Okay. Let's see. Jay Marie says, I'm a small business owner. I scoop dog poop and make a great living, and I love dogs. There you go. It's called the Trump derangement syndrome. Every person from Venezuela is happy. There are moments when I really, every single person was super happy. And if you want a giant rundown, so this guy right here is an attorney and a historian in Venezuela. And he has this great, first he did it on TikTok. And you can actually watch these videos. People said they wouldn't watch these videos because they're not on TikTok. I'm not on TikTok either, but if you go through your browser, you can see these videos in your browser on your desktop, right? Maybe on mobile too. I don't know. But I was able to watch these videos. But even if you can't, down below, just after I posted these videos of him from TikTok, he reposted them on X just today. So down below, there are these videos. He goes through the entire history of the Maduro regime and narco trafficking. He talks about, how Venezuela used to cooperate with the DEA, just like Colombia does. And then all of a sudden, Hugo Chavez stopped cooperating with the DEA. And all of a sudden, the Venezuelan regime was in the narco trafficking business. And he basically goes through exactly the history of this, how all this happened up until today. And he talks about the history of oil in Venezuela and the huge participation of American companies and American dollars in building out the infrastructure, how everything was confiscated by the Venezuelan state. And then the Venezuelan state basically ran it into the ground. He gives the complete history of narco trafficking and oil. And what you figure out is that basically, as soon as they started running, as soon as their communist policies, their collectivist policies started running the oil industry into the ground, you quickly see that they sort of replaced the missing income with narco trafficking, but then that money doesn't get to the people. It's just all kept by the insiders in the government running the narco trafficking regime. And the end result is what the last poster described, this, intense, unbelievable poverty in this country that used to be one of the richest countries in the world, right? Venezuela used to be one of the richest countries in the world because the US went down there and built out their entire petroleum industry. And they have the biggest petroleum reserves in the world, bigger than Saudi Arabia, the biggest petroleum reserves in the world. And through communist policies, over decades, the people are all now living in poverty, and they're getting a tiny amount of oil out. The amount of oil, if you look at, I also posted a list of the oil reserves of various countries in the world, with Venezuela at the top. They have very low extraction. The rate at which they're getting oil out of the ground is very, very low because the collectivist policies ran the oil industry into the ground. Like the infrastructure for extracting the oil is rotting. It's rusting and rotting because they just it's the wrong policies to make something like that work. Yeah, and I posted in one of the threads I posted that there was no way to tell, if these were the right videos or there were videos from that day. And some of the videos that people were posting were from different events, and some of them were from today. But a lot of the videos I posted, people are literally talking about the capture of Maduro. So some of the celebration pictures, people, misappropriated from other places, but there's a lot of videos in there of Venezuelans talking about the capture of Maduro. So, yep. Venezuela also has the largest oil stockpile. It's also it's very heavy crude. Coincidentally, the US, and this historian lawyer right here talks about this in his videos. Coincidentally, in Louisiana and Texas, the US has some of the best refineries for refining very heavy crude like they have in Venezuela. Venezuela, okay. Chalk Milk says Venezuela has never been to the World Cup. Yeah, I have no idea. I knew some of those videos. I posted that some of the videos might have been, from the wrong day or even AI or whatever, because I knew inevitably it's X. People are going to post wrong videos, claim, whatever fits their agenda. But, a lot of those videos are obviously Venezuelans finding out about the capture of Hugo Chavez and talking about it. There's hundreds and hundreds of videos like that already on X. So the trend, what I said in the post, is the trend is unmistakable. What's going on here? Very, very heavy celebration of the capture of Hugo Chavez. Capture of Maduro, sorry. The poverty and coming starvation might have something to do with us embargoing them. Unfortunately, so this lawyer talks about it in this video. That all happened. That was all happening before. That was all happening before we even started embargoing them, right? It's like the collectivist policies were already running the economy into the ground before we were even embargoing them. He addresses that point particularly. So now you're going to allow them to create their own Venezuelan oil. I don't know. I mean, I didn't vote for Trump. I didn't vote for Trump. I didn't vote for Kamala either. But so I'm not the person who's going to defend whatever Trump's going to do. I think the current administration, they're wild boys. Some of the stuff they do, I like. What are they going to do in the case of the Venezuelan oil industry? Trump's already announced that U.S. companies are going to come in and rebuild the Venezuelan infrastructure, and they're going to get paid back for doing that, I'm sure, out of the proceeds of the oil. But a lot of these videos I've posted, people address that. There's Venezuelans addressing that, and their response is, "What do you think? We know the U.S. wants oil. What do you think the Chinese and the Russians were here for? They were also here for oil. The only difference is with the Chinese and the Russians, it all got sucked up by the Maduro regime. The people never saw a dime of it." And their response is, "We know that the U.S. is going to cut a deal that leads to greater prosperity for the Venezuelan people." I believe that's going to be true at the end of the day. Will I approve of everything that goes on around, in terms of how quickly, how much U.S. companies, are involved with the Venezuelan oil industry, and how much, money those companies make, versus how much money goes back to the Venezuelan people? I don't know. We'll see what Trump does. Something that's going to happen probably over decades, though. It won't just be the Trump administration. So it's going to happen over decades. But universally, Venezuelans seem to be much happier with this than what they were living under previously. And we'll actually talk a little bit more about that now, because I think some people maybe don't even understand exactly what was going on in Venezuela prior to this. So we saw this already, this crazy recounting of all the torture and murder that was going on under the Maduro regime. I think you can imagine. They're like, "Oh, Chevron wants to rebuild our oil infrastructure, so we're not extracting this tiny amount of oil per year. We're okay with that because they're not going to murder us. The U.S. is not going to come in and murder all of us like the Maduro regime was." And if you wanted a visual to understand, this is the complex. This was like a mall built in the 1950s when Venezuela was prosperous. This was a mall built. This was taken over by the regime, and turned into the biggest torture facility in the Western Hemisphere. More torture has happened in this building than in any other building in the entire Western Hemisphere. So Venezuelan people seem to be justified in their celebration. I think they don't want to be tortured anymore. In fact, Marco Rubio a year ago made a little like 2-minute like micro documentary about this. He has actual audio of torture sessions that somehow they collected, but there's actual audio of the torture going on. It's such a notorious facility. I think Venezuelans are like, oh no. Chevron's going to come in and rebuild our oil infrastructure. So there's more money, there's more commerce going on from the oil industry in Venezuela. We don't want that. We want to go back to the world's largest, the Western Hemisphere's largest torture center. That's not what they want. Here's the documentary if you want to see this. This is from Marco Rubio's account when he was a senator. Now he's the Secretary of State, so they've kind of archived this account. But this is a post he made in October 2024, over a year ago, all about this facility and the horrible torture that was going on there. It used to be a mall. Back in the 1950s, it was a mall. That's footage from when it was a mall. And then the Maduro regime took it over and was just like, how can we more effectively torture our own citizens? Let's do it in this super cool building. That'll be more fun for us. So I think Venezuelans are justified in celebrating. And of course, the celebrations brains of many communists in the US. This guy's an actual communist. He's a part of I forget what organization he says he's a part of, like, American Communist Union or something. And he runs into this guy, and this guy's like, he's like, I'm with the American Communist Union. I stand with the people of Venezuela. And this guy's like, all the Venezuelans seem to be celebrating. And this guy's like, what? He's like, well, I haven't seen that. And this dude literally breaks out his phone and shows him videos of Venezuelans celebrating. And this dude has no response. His brain is completely broken by the idea that he's actually not standing with the people of Venezuela. He's standing against them. Frazik says, I'm generally happy about Maduro's removal from power, but I'm concerned about the precedent it sets, a unilateral use of force. Yeah, some of the Venezuelan videos I saw, they kind of address this. And a lot of the videos I saw, they were pissed that people would even question this, because they're kind of like, we've been trying to get this asshole removed for years. We voted him out and he didn't leave. We have protests and he just murders and tortures us. Like, we needed somebody to unilaterally remove him. That's what we needed. We've been trying to get rid of this asshole for years, and he just keeps torturing and murdering us. And he sucks. His corruption sucks up all his corruption, and mismanagement of the economy results in us all being in poverty. We've been praying for somebody to unilaterally remove this asshole. So it's hard to argue with them. When I was fiat mining up until September, I worked very closely with a Venezuelan guy who now lives in Argentina, who had a lot to say about the system in Venezuela. I also have a really close friend who I've known for a really long time, the kind of guy who I spent many nights in bars. I'll put it that way with this guy. He was the kind of friend, he and I, we would come home to angry. Our significant others would be very angry when we came home, because we spent many nights when we were young men in bars together, and we'd get in trouble with our significant others for coming home too late. So I'm trying to say a good friend who I got in a lot of trouble with because we know each other like that. He's the kind of person who's very honest with me. He lives in Venezuela now, and dude doesn't have anything good to say about Maduro, and I haven't been able to talk to him since this went down, but I can guarantee you he's going to, and in fact, he's told me about being a part of some of those protests, the same ones that led to people ending up in that torture center. And it doesn't have anything good to say about Maduro, and I can guarantee you he was out there celebrating with every other Venezuelan person. I want to live in the woods says, good morning. We'll have to watch later, but have a great day, all. Sub-Zero says, think it's a coincidence that the big oil refinery that just left California refined that kind of petro. Maybe I'm mixing up details. I'm not up on the news about this California refinery. So the ones I know about that can handle the heavy crude like that are in Texas and Louisiana. But I'm no petroleum industry expert, so double check anything I say about that. We need more allies in the Western Hemisphere for sure. Yeah, we do. Caracas is where Frampton's playing with his guitar, and it crashed. His guitar caught fire, and he recovered it recently. Interesting. Okay. So that's America's new rendition prison now. No, it's still full of political prisoners. I mean, Maduro and his wife are the only ones we took, right? The rest of his regime is still there. That prison is still full of Maduro's political prisoners. They're probably torturing their asses right now, trying to figure out how this happened. There's probably dudes in that building getting tortured as I speak. It will help the people there in Venezuela. It definitely will. They were not happy with how things used to be, but they sure are happy. They sure are not happy with this. I don't know if I understand your comment. Maduro put out a hit on Rubio in 2017. That wouldn't surprise me. We need to have our security control that airspace. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, there's a lot of big questions about how the administration in DC is going to proceed from here, because they basically got Maduro's vice president, who's a part of the Maduro regime. You know, she's around there today having cabinet meetings, trying to figure out how to go forward. So they're basically negotiating with her. And then you've got the president and vice president ticket, who actually got elected in the last election. Maduro just stuck around like an asshole because he got voted out, right? But you know, when you're that kind of regime, you know, when you're a dictator, you don't leave. You just kind of stay even when you get voted out. So we've got the people who are the legal president and vice president of Venezuela, and then we've got his vice president, who currently controls the whole regime machinery over there to negotiate with. So who knows? Who knows how the Trump administration goes forward from here? They're wild boys, though, so almost anything's possible, I think. So that the Venezuela thing, I'm very hopeful for. So this is also going on. So some of you will know about this, the Pentagon pizza tracker. So people have different opinions about this, but there have been reports of sort of like a US air power buildup in Europe. And a lot of people are predicting that this has something to do with Iran. Maybe Trump administration is going directly from Venezuela to Iran. And people are citing, you know, there are reports that Netanyahu has been tied up with his cabinet all day today. And then we have the Pentagon pizza tracker. So this is people who attempt to keep track of the call volumes at pizza places around the Pentagon, right? And so they always claim that there's a bunch of really intense meetings going on if the call volume at these pizza places spikes, you know, and that would, you know, seem to make sense, you know, seems like a very practical, common sense thing to think about if you're trying to predict when the Pentagon is intensely, you know, planning something. But then you'll see reports like this. Let's talk about the Pentagon pizza tracker, a subject that causes great distress to me. It's not real, and I would like to stop seeing it. The Pentagon has a pizza place. It has any kind of food you could possibly want. It's explicitly there, so they don't order delivery. So he's saying, you know, obviously the Pentagon doesn't want to broadcast to the world when they're having, you know, a huge amount of crazy late night meetings or something. So they have their own pizza place so that they would never actually have to order out delivery. He says, secondly, what you see on Google with these surges is based on phones inside of the various pizza shops around the Pentagon. It's not the influx of orders. People don't typically go inside of pizza places outside of a pickup. So a few people an hour is enough to cause a spike. Thirdly, let's get serious for a minute. Am I to believe that America's entire military is eating pizza every single day and night during periods of tension and conflict? That's absurd. But there is like sort of a lot of chatter on Twitter about how we seem to be seeing a lot of activity, like something else is coming next. Omar is saying something pretty funny here. Trump is preparing Guantanamo to hold 30,000 immigrants. How many does that facility hold? No idea. No idea. This is something that I think is interesting. Maybe there is something coming next. Maybe the administration is like, hey, if we're going to piss off the entire left by capturing Maduro, maybe we do something related to Iran as well. So there was also an interesting article today. There's an interesting article today that was the article was kind of like the article was sort of like a report of intelligence, right? Unattributed intelligence. There's no way to really follow, or there's no way to really verify this, but it was like an intelligence. It was an article on an intelligence report, couldn't be verified, that Khamenei had a backup plan to do exactly as Bashar al-Assad did when he fled Syria, and that's go to Moscow. He was going to take his, family and 20 closest aides or whatever, and they were all going to head for Moscow the second the Iranian security forces stopped obeying orders. So could this be real? Could be not. Who knows? There's so much going on in Iran right now. You see so many videos of protesters attacking security forces attacking protesters, huge crowds of protesters. Obviously, you've got the Pentagon pizza tracker people saying the Pentagon is intensely working on something according to the pizza tracker. If you believe that that's not debunked, and you get these reports of American air power buildups in Europe. So it could be that the wild boys in Washington are just like, hey, we've already pissed off all the people who are going to be pissed at us over capturing Maduro. Maybe we start putting some pressure on Iran until Khamenei flees to Moscow. Then Reza Pahlavi can come in, and all of a sudden, maybe we've solved the biggest rogue state problem in the Western Hemisphere and the biggest rogue state problem in the Middle East all at once. If they pulled that off in a number of days, that would be crazy. But like they pointed out, they spent months planning the Maduro operation. Could they have been spending months also planning what to do with Iran if there's kind of intervention plan for Iran? Not quite the same situation, because the Maduro thing was pretty proactive, whereas Iran, it would seem like it would be a reaction to these latest protests. Of course, you can imagine the U.S. has human operations. I think we can all assume pretty safely the U.S. has intense human operations in Iran. They're doing human intelligence stuff. Like there are case officers dealing with people in Iran. And, are those case officers going to tend to try to get those agents to support protests like that or oppose them? They're definitely going to support them. But, so you could argue that, you could make an argument that, maybe the U.S. has got things going on in Iran that made these protests a little bit more predictable than they would seem from the outside. Or you could argue that these protests were too spontaneous and the U.S. couldn't have predicted this, so they couldn't have been planning something to support those protests for very long. We don't know, but it would be very interesting. I think with this administration, these wild boys in Washington, it's like you can almost assume that the wildest thing is the most likely. So I wouldn't at all be shocked if we find out, within some short number of days or weeks that that they do have a plan to apply some pressure to the Iranian regime, in the hopes that we get this plan B activated, where we have sort of the 20 top people fleeing to Moscow. So could be wild. These are big important events, but it is also World Carnivore Month. Since I've already pissed off the collectivists, apologies. You're probably excellent people. The people who are collectivists or otherwise don't like what I'm saying, you're probably excellent people. So don't think I'm mad at you because we have different views. We'll see what happens. But I'm also probably going to piss off the vegans. The I'm also probably going to piss off the vegans because it's World Carnivore Month, and last year and the year before, I definitely pissed off my fair share of vegans by talking about carnivorism. But I've found some pretty interesting posts for the last couple of days. I usually post, a lot of stuff more on the sort of technical medical side about carnivore, but there's always really interesting historical stuff about carnivore. So this is kind of a great story about a British writer, William Henry Hudson, who visited Argentina and encountered gauchos, saying things like, I was surprised at the difficulty persuading gauchos to eat anything but beef. I bought biscuits and found them thrown away. They'd rather go hungry than eat bread if beef was available tomorrow. Typical meals: beef roasted over fire, fattier cuts. Afternoon, grilled ribs. Evening, beef again. Zero vegetables, zero grains, zero variety, just beef and tea. The gauchos suffer none of the ailments common to civilized man: no digestive troubles, no obesity, no tooth decay. Their teeth were uniformly excellent. Physical endurance such that they could ride for days with minimal rest, fight when necessary, resume riding without apparent fatigue. A French physician. These men live exclusively on animal flesh and appear healthier than our European peasantry, who eat varied diets of grains and vegetables. So history obviously is replete with stories like this. So these stories go back to the 1800s, but we can go back even further in the annals of carnivorism to Marco Polo reaching Kublai Khan's Mongolian court in 1275, expecting exotic spices. What he documents is the most extensive dairy culture in history. How do Mongol armies move without supply lines? Each soldier carries leather flasks for milk and travels with horses. The horses are mobile dairy factories. Polo writes, when going on distant expedition, they take no gear except 2 leather bottles for milk and a little earthenware pot for meat. In great urgency, they ride 10 days without lighting fire or taking meal. They sustain themselves on the blood of their horses, opening a vein and drinking till satisfied, then staunching it. But blood drinking was emergency rations. The standard was, I don't speak any Mongolian language, so kumis, I'm guessing kumis, which is fermented mare's milk. A lot of people know about the fermented mare's milk, but fresh mare's milk in leather bags, stirred 1,000 times, fermented 1 to 2 days. Results like slightly alcoholic, vitamin-rich, shelf-stable for weeks. A warrior consumed 2 to 3 liters daily. That's 1,000 to 1,500 calories from fermented dairy alone. Add dried meat, and you have complete nutrition requiring no cooking, no supply lines, consumable war riding. European armies needed baggage trains, flour, grain, salt, meat, wine, cooking equipment, had to stop to prepare food, find water, rest regularly. Mongols covered 60 to 80 miles daily consistently. European armies 15 to 20 on good days. So this is hilarious. It sounds like Kublai Khan's army was just sort of like half lit on fermented mare's milk, but apparently super healthy. The reports of their health are kind of like the gauchos, super healthy, and apparently very, very carnivore. Let's see. Chalk Milk says, you don't find trouble eating out, or you just hammering steak. I just eat steak. So I'll eat like I prefer to eat steak, but I'll eat like sometimes my significant other will make various other animal dishes for me, chicken, whatever, fish. But so I'll eat those things, but I prefer to just eat steak because when you're a carnivore, you kind of need the fat content. You definitely need to up the fat content. So you don't want to be too lean. But this is why the Mongols still rule us. I mean, they did have the biggest empire. I think we can argue they had the biggest empire. Some people try to make a case kind of for the, like the British Empire or other various European empires. But I mean, these guys started riding at like the Altai Mountains, and they made it all the way to Poland. So it's kind of hard to argue that there's ever been a bigger empire. The colonial European empires, sure, they're kind of empires under a broad use of that definition, but the Mongols are kind of ruling with an iron fist. And sure, you can argue there was what do we want to call it? indigenization, when the Mongols go into certain areas, parts of the Middle East, we find that their forces eventually are composed more by indigenous personnel than by actual Mongols. So there's a little bit of shadowing of colonialism, but it was a directly ruled empire in a lot of ways. So I think it's hard to argue that they didn't have the biggest empire, maybe in the history of the world. You can make cases for other empires, but man, they had a pretty impressive empire. It's definitely, if you have a conversation about the biggest empire in the history of the world, definitely the various Mongol hordes are going to come up in that conversation, which I think is pretty interesting. But I think we've covered all the news. I think I've pissed off a few people who have collectivist leanings, which is okay. I probably pissed off a few vegans, also okay. A lot of things like that. Oh, Sub-Zero. Okay, Sub-Zero. Thank you. Wow. This is the new biggest super chat I've ever gotten. Thank you, Sub-Zero. Thank you. Sub-Zero says, thanks for the longer show today. Looks like things are looking up, even if we have to go back to the fiat mines for now. Yeah, I mean, it's like we're still at the point where, thank you for the super chat, though. I very much appreciate that. I've gotten the two previous biggest ones were $20, I believe. This is the new record holder. So thank you, Sub-Zero. I really appreciate that. Very, very nice of you. Yeah, I mean, things are looking up. The tax loss harvesting season is over. So we're back in the 40s, right? Which doesn't sound gigantic. I appreciate you upping the bar. I appreciate that. You are the new record holder. I think I have a feeling that'll last for quite a while. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks. I appreciate it. I think that'll last for quite a while. I think you will be the record holder for quite a while because it's a pretty big jump up. But I think everything's looking good. Like all of the things we could wish for 2026, besides just wishing for number goes up, like all of the variables I can think of that affect number goes up, I mean, there's like unrealistic things we could wish for. Like, I wish Elon would wake up and say, fuck Doge. It's just going to be Cardano. All of Twitter's going to have a payment system. It's just running on Cardano. That would be fantastic. Unrealistic, right? Our best hope is that Cardano's in the mix on something like that, or if some other giant tech platform, adopts cryptocurrencies, we just hope to be in the mix. That's more realistic. But as far as realistic stuff we can wish for, I think what we can wish for is the market structure bill passing. And it looks like we're on track to get that write-up or that markup in 11 days. That's going to happen in like 11 days. And it's supposed to happen in 11 days. And I think I'm hoping once we get that markup, it's an expedient path to passage by the Senate. There's going to have to be reconciliation between the House Clarity Act and the Senate Market Structure Bill. They're going to negotiate back and forth because they're going to want different things probably. Hopefully not too different. So there's going to be reconciliation. And then eventually something gets passed by both houses, goes to the president's desk. It'll get signed like all the other bills like it pretty quickly, very quickly. There won't be deliberation. It'll just get signed. And then we'll be in business on the regulatory clarity front. The other thing we need is liquidity. And it looks like liquidity is being teed up, right? The black swan things that could screw us, we could get fucked if there's some kind of a giant crash. Like people are bringing up JP Morgan predicting, some kind of a negative event. If we have some kind of a black swan crash, small or big, something super unexpected, unpredictable, but very big, then we could get screwed by that in 2026. But I agree. As far, like that could happen anytime. We could get a black swan event like that at any time. We could also, maybe with similar likelihood, get something wonderful happening to Cardano anytime. The fact that we're riding this privacy trend right now, this privacy super trend, everybody in crypto is talking about privacy. That's huge for Cardano. Midnight as part of the greater Cardano ecosystem, the privacy layer in the Cardano layerverse, that's huge for us right now. We're kind of at the forefront. Like even Grok is citing that as a reason that we might outperform everybody in 2026, which is crazy. I didn't expect that at all. That's great. Liquidity seems to be teed up, as we've talked about quite a bit on this channel. So I think everything we could reasonably hope for is sort of teed up for 2026. We could still get screwed, just like we did in 2025. We could get fucked. I hope not. We'll see. But you know, is January the month we all get to retire and not go back to fiat mines? Probably not. Probably not. I'm definitely gonna have to do a lot more fiat mining upcoming. How quickly that happens, we'll see. But I'll have to go back to the fiat mines at some point pretty soon here. I'll let you guys know when that's happening. If it's something that's gonna, change the schedule of videos, for sure, I'll let you know. If it's just a little bit of freelancing, then that's kind of okay. But I think the freedom quotient in the world, like obviously people have different opinions about what happened over the weekend in Venezuela. But for me, this is strongly in the direction of the freedom quotient in the world increasing. Um, every Venezuelan, I haven't yet found a Venezuelan who's like not a part of the Maduro regime, who's pissed about this. Everybody seems to be jubilant. So everybody seems to be super excited. I'm always excited when I see the freedom quotient going up. It's the same reason I'm excited about Cardano. I want the freedom quotient to go up for humans in general, and that includes Venezuelans and Iranians. So I think good things are happening in the world. But yeah, it's we're starting out a strong 2026, I think. Omar Wright, yeah, that's a better way to put it. Mongols had the largest contiguous empire in history. Certainly, the British Empire was not contiguous. You had colonies all over the world. But yeah, I think we're starting out a very strong 2026. And I'm looking forward to what happens the rest of 2026. I hope everybody had a great New Year's Eve, a great New Year, and I'll talk to you soon.